On February 3, 2015, a panicked message appeared on a popular technology forum that would spark one of the internet's most enduring and disturbing urban legends. A user, claiming to have accidentally stumbled into a hidden corner of the deep web, described witnessing what they called a red room, a live-streamed torture session where viewers could pay in Bitcoin to direct the violence inflicted upon a restrained victim. The post, which was quickly deleted by moderators, ignited a firestorm of speculation, fear, and fascination that would consume online communities for years to come. Law enforcement agencies would eventually dismiss most Red Room claims as elaborate hoaxes designed to attract attention or scam curious internet users. Yet the mythology persisted, fueled by the very real existence of dark web marketplaces, the anonymity provided by encryption technologies, and humanity's eternal fascination with the macabre. What began as whispered warnings in Reddit, threads, and image board posts would eventually intersect with genuine criminal cases that, while not matching the sensationalized descriptions of red rooms, demonstrated that the line between internet legend and horrific reality was disturbingly thin. The concept of red rooms did not emerge from nowhere. The term itself appears to have originated from Japanese horror fiction, particularly the 2000 animated flash film Red Room, created by Toshihiko Kubuka, which depicted a website that invited viewers to watch someone die by controlling their actions through typed commands. This piece of digital horror fiction planted seeds in the collective consciousness of early internet users, creating a template for what would become an evolving mythology. Throughout the early 2000s, as peer-to-peer file-sharing networks and anonymous forums proliferated, stories circulated about hidden websites accessible only through complex proxy chains where the wealthy and depraved could watch and direct acts of unspeakable violence. These tales shared common elements: astronomical Bitcoin payments ranging from $50,000 to several million dollars per session, victims described as homeless individuals or trafficking victims from developing nations, and sophisticated criminals using military-grade encryption to evade law enforcement detection. Technology journalists and cybersecurity researchers consistently debunked these claims, pointing out the technical impossibilities involved in streaming high-quality video through the Tor network, which was designed for anonymity rather than bandwidth-intensive applications. The Tor network's architecture, routing traffic through multiple encrypted layers across volunteer-operated nodes worldwide, created latency issues that made real-time video streaming extremely difficult, if not impossible, during the mid-2010. Researchers at the Digital Citizens Alliance and the Tor project itself published reports explaining that streaming video through Tor would be choppy, low resolution, and frequently interrupted, hardly the seamless experience described in sensationalized accounts. Despite these technical realities, the Red Room mythology continued to grow, fed by creepypasta stories, YouTube videos documenting supposed investigations, and the genuine existence of disturbing content on the dark web that, while not matching Red Room descriptions, was horrific enough to make the legends seem plausible. Throughout 2015 and 2016, cybersecurity firms monitoring dark web activity reported a surge in websites claiming to offer Red Room access, but investigation revealed these sites to be elaborate scams. Recorded Future, a threat intelligence company, published findings in August 2016 demonstrating that supposed Red Room sites collected Bitcoin payments from curious or disturbed individuals but never delivered the promised content, instead either disappearing with the cryptocurrency or providing links to previously recorded violent content readily available elsewhere. Their analysis of blockchain transactions associated with these scam sites revealed that operators had collectively stolen an estimated $400,000 in Bitcoin from individuals seeking access to Red Rooms between 2014 and 2016. The scammers exploited the very factors that made verification impossible. The anonymity of the dark web meant victims could not report the fraud to authorities without admitting they had attempted to access illegal content, and the technical limitation Tor meant that when sites failed to load properly or videos did not play, users often assumed it was due to their own technical incompetence rather than recognizing an obvious scam. Daniel Gary, a computer forensics expert who testified in numerous federal cases involving dark web activity, stated in a 2016 deposition that his firm had investigated over 200 reported Red Room sites between 2013 and 2016 and found absolutely zero evidence of legitimate live-streamed violence for pay operations, though we certainly found ample evidence of scams, honeypot operations by law enforcement, and repositories of existing violent content. His testimony would become frequently cited by journalists and researchers attempting to separate fact from fiction in the Red Room discourse. However, the complete dismissal of Red Room legends as pure fiction would prove premature. On November 12, 2016, Australian federal police officers executed a search warrant at a residence in the Melbourne suburb of Chirnside Park, arresting 28-year-old Peter Gerard Scully, an Australian national who had been operating in the Philippines for the previous 3 years. The subsequent investigation would reveal a case so disturbing that it would forever complicate the simple narrative that Red Room activities existed only in imagination. Scully, who had fled Australia in 2011 while facing fraud charges, had relocated to Mindanao in the southern Philippines, where he established what prosecutors would later describe as a child sexual exploitation enterprise. Working with several Filipina accomplices, including his girlfriend, Leazil Margallo, and 2 other women who would later testify against him, Scully created a series of increasingly disturbing videos depicting the sexual abuse and torture of impoverished children, some as young as 18 months old. These videos were not live-streamed in the manner described in classic Red Room mythology, but they were produced on commission for paying customers on the dark web who could request specific acts and scenarios. The operation came to light when a missing children investigation led police to discover 2 young girls, aged 9 and 12, locked in a facility Scully controlled. A third victim, an 11-year-old girl named Cindy, had been murdered during the production of one of Scully's most notorious videos entitled Daisy's Destruction, which depicted the systematic torture of multiple young children and had been sold on dark web marketplaces for approximately $10,000 per copy. The discovery sent shockwaves through law enforcement communities worldwide and provided disturbing evidence that while the specific Red Room scenario of live-streamed violence might be largely mythical, the underlying concept of producing extreme violence on demand for paying customers was horrifyingly real. The Scully case, as it became known in legal documents and media reports, demonstrated several crucial elements that both supported and contradicted Red Room mythology. Scully was indeed producing custom violent content for anonymous customers who paid using cryptocurrency, fulfilling one of the core concepts of Red Room legends. His customers could make specific requests and receive personalized content, creating an interactive element similar to what Red Room stories described. The Australian Federal Police, working with Philippine National Police and the Federal Bureau of Investigation's Violent Crimes Against Children Unit, documented extensive communications between Scully and his customers on now-defunct dark web forums, where he advertised his services under various pseudonyms, including Cowboy and Pedogod. These communications, entered into evidence during his subsequent trial, revealed a marketplace where individuals from multiple countries, including the United States, the United Kingdom, Germany, and several Scandinavian nations, commissioned specific scenarios and acts to be performed and recorded. However, the content was not live-streamed. Scully recorded the abuse, edited the footage, and then distributed it to customers via encrypted file sharing methods, circumventing the technical limitations that made live streaming through Tor networks impractical. This distinction was crucial for law enforcement officials attempting to manage public perception and for researchers trying to accurately characterize the threat landscape. Andrew Oosterban, former chief of the Child Exploitation and Obscenity section of the U.S. Department of Justice, stated in congressional testimony on February 28, 2017, that while the Scully case represents one of the most disturbing examples of child exploitation we have encountered, it is important to note that the technical architecture differed significantly from the live-streamed torture scenarios described in Red Room urban legends, though the underlying commercial exploitation of extreme violence for profit shares conceptual similarities. The investigation into Scully's network revealed the extent of the dark web marketplace for extreme content and the sophisticated methods criminals employed to evade detection. Digital forensics specialists examining seized computer equipment discovered that Scully had utilized multiple layers of operational security, including virtual private networks, Tor browser access, PGP encryption for communications, and Bitcoin mixing services to obscure financial transactions. His customer base, investigators determined, numbered in the hundreds based on blockchain analysis of Bitcoin wallets associated with his operations. The videos he produced were distributed through private forums that required vouching from existing members, payment of cryptocurrency deposits, and demonstrated engagement with similar content as prerequisites for access. These forums operated with sophisticated countermeasures against law enforcement infiltration, including CAPTCHA systems designed to prevent automated scraping, mandatory waiting periods between registration and full access, and administrator teams that investigated new members' backgrounds by requiring them to provide samples of their own illegal content as a form of perverted verification. Special Agent Robert Litt of the FBI's Innocent Images National Initiative explained in a March 2017 press conference following Scully's conviction that these communities employ vetting mechanisms that make traditional undercover operations extremely difficult and time-consuming, requiring agents to develop extensive cover histories and in some cases provide sanitized content that appears to be illegal material but has been created using digital effects and adult actors, which then requires extensive legal review and approval at the Department of Justice level before deployment. This operational complexity explained why, despite law enforcement's awareness of these forums' existence, investigations moved slowly and many operators remained at large for extended periods. On June 13, 2018, Peter Scully was sentenced to life imprisonment without possibility of parole by a Philippine court, receiving one of the harshest sentences ever imposed in the country's legal system. Presiding Judge Carmelita Sarno Davin of the Cagayan de Oro Regional Trial Court stated during sentencing that the depravity demonstrated by the accused represents a complete abandonment of humanity and the most extreme exploitation of the vulnerable members of our society. The court finds that the evidence demonstrates not only the commission of heinous crimes, but the systematic and commercial nature of these activities, producing content designed for distribution to an international network of individuals sharing the accused's perverted interests. The 217-page sentencing document detailed the scope of Scully's operations, including the production of at least 12 major video series containing hundreds of individual clips, cryptocurrency transactions totaling approximately $300,000 over a 3-year period, and testimonial evidence from multiple victims and accomplices. The case generated extensive media coverage in Australia, the Philippines, and internationally, with major outlets including the Sydney Morning Herald, The Guardian, BBC News, and CNN publishing investigative pieces exploring how Scully's operation functioned and what it revealed about the dark web's capacity to facilitate extreme exploitation. However, the coverage also demonstrated the media's struggle with balancing public interest against gratuitous detail, with many outlets criticized for including unnecessary descriptions of abuse that some child protection advocates argued re-victimized survivors and provided a template for potential offenders. The Scully case forced a recalibration of how law enforcement, technology companies, and cybersecurity researchers approach the Red Room phenomenon. While the classic conception of live-stream torture remained technically implausible and largely unverified, the case demonstrated that the commercial production of extreme violence on demand was not only possible but had been occurring at scale. This nuanced reality proved difficult to communicate to the public, which often defaulted to binary thinking. Either Red Rooms were completely fake, or they were exactly as described in sensationalized accounts. Dr. Catherine Siegfried-Spellar, a researcher at Purdue University specializing in cyberpsychology and criminal behavior, published a comprehensive analysis in the Journal of Digital Forensics, Security, and Law in October 2018, examining the disconnect between Red Room mythology and documented cases of dark web violence. Her research, based on interviews with law enforcement personnel, analysis of court documents, and technical assessment of dark web infrastructure, concluded that while the specific scenario of real-time live-stream torture controlled by paying viewers remains without credible documentation, despite extensive investigation, the broader concept of violence as a service exists in various forms throughout the dark web ecosystem. The distinction between live streaming and custom-produced content may seem semantic to victims and the public, but represents a crucial technical and operational difference that law enforcement must understand to effectively combat these crimes. Her work would become foundational in subsequent law enforcement training programs and policy discussions about resource allocation for investigating dark web criminal activity. The conversation around red rooms took another disturbing turn on January 8, 2017, when German police in Frankfurt arrested a 39-year-old systems administrator named Marco G., whose full surname was withheld under German privacy laws, in connection with the operation of a dark web marketplace called Hurt2 The Core. The site, which had operated intermittently since late 2014, advertised itself as a commission service for extreme content production and featured categories that suggested services ranging from severe assault to murder for hire. German Federal Criminal Police Office, Bundeskriminalamt, spokesperson Sabine Muller stated in a January 10, 2017 press release that our investigation into this marketplace began in 2016 following intelligence sharing with Europol and multiple international partners. While we initially suspected the site to be a scam operation designed to defraud users, our investigation uncovered evidence that the operator had facilitated contact between customers and producers of violent content, essentially functioning as a broker in a violence-as-a-service economy. The investigation revealed that Marco G. had not produced violent content himself, but operated a platform where producers and consumers could connect, taking a commission of approximately 15 to 30% on completed transactions. Forensic analysis of the site's server, which investigators seized from a hosting facility in Romania, contained encrypted communications between over 4,000 registered users and evidence of at least 67 completed transactions between 2014 and 2016. The nature of these transactions remained partially unclear, as most communications employed end-to-end encryption and many participants used dead drops and other methods to exchange content without leaving traceable digital footprints. But investigators were able to decrypt several conversations that referenced custom production of assault videos, animal cruelty content, and in one case, communications suggesting the production of a snuff film, though prosecutors ultimately could not confirm whether this content was actually produced or represented another scam. The Hurt2. The core case highlighted the role of marketplace facilitators in the dark web violence economy, a dimension that had received less attention than content producers but played a crucial enabling role. The marketplace model, familiar from drug trafficking sites like the now-defunct Silk Road and Alphabay, provided infrastructure that solved trust problems inherent in illegal transactions. Escrow systems held cryptocurrency payments until both parties confirmed transaction completion. Rating systems allowed users to evaluate producers' reliability and content quality, and dispute resolution mechanisms adjudicated conflicts between buyers and sellers. This infrastructure reduced transaction costs and risks for both producers and consumers, potentially expanding the market for extreme content by providing assurances that reduce the probability of scams or law enforcement stings. During Marco G.'s trial, which began in Munich Regional Court on September 4, 2017, prosecutors presented evidence that the marketplace had implemented sophisticated anti-fraud measures, including a reputation system where producers gained credibility by completing transactions successfully, a vouching process where established community members could invite new producers, and an escrow system that held Bitcoin payments until customers confirmed receipt of content. Defense attorneys argued that Marco G. had operated under the belief that the marketplace primarily facilitated access to existing content and staged performances rather than genuine violence, characterizing him as a naive technologist who failed to adequately police the platform he created. However, prosecutors countered with decrypted communications, showing Marco G. had engaged in detailed discussions with multiple producers about security measures for content creation, suggested methods for avoiding law enforcement detection, and actively promoted the site on dark web forums with explicit references to extreme violence, undermining claims of ignorance or naivety. On March 15, 2018, Marco G. was convicted on multiple counts, including facilitating criminal organizations, distribution of violent content, and money laundering, receiving a sentence of 9 years and 6 months in prison. Judge Heinrich Kraus stated in his sentencing remarks that the defendant created infrastructure that enabled a marketplace for human suffering, profiting from connecting producers of violent content with consumers willing to pay for customized depictions of cruelty. While the defendant did not personally create this content, his technical expertise and deliberate construction of systems to facilitate these transactions makes him complicit in every act of violence his platform enabled. The case established important legal precedents in Germany and throughout the European Union regarding platform liability for user-generated illegal content and the application of organized crime statutes to dark web marketplace operators. The European Union Agency for Law Enforcement Cooperation, commonly known as Europol, cited the case in subsequent policy recommendations to member states, suggesting harmonized legal frameworks for prosecuting marketplace operators who facilitated violence even when they did not directly participate in violent acts. Rob Wainwright, Europol's director at the time, stated in congressional testimony before the United States House Committee on Homeland Security on May 22, 2018, that the Hurt 2, the core prosecution, demonstrates the necessity of treating dark web infrastructure providers as criminal participants rather than neutral technology platforms. These marketplace operators employ sophisticated technical knowledge specifically to enable illegal activity while insulating themselves from direct participation, requiring legal frameworks that recognize their complicity. The question of whether genuine live-streamed Red Room operations had ever occurred remained contentious among law enforcement professionals, cybersecurity researchers, and internet folklore enthusiasts throughout 2017 and 2018. Several high-profile claims emerged during this period, each generating intense speculation before ultimately being debunked or remaining unverified. In May 2017, an anonymous post on the image board 8chan claimed that a Red Room livestream had occurred on a specific .onion address, providing what appeared to be a Tor hidden service URL and describing a session where viewers paid Bitcoin to direct torture of a kidnapped victim. The post went viral across multiple platforms, generating millions of views and spawning countless reaction videos on YouTube and speculation threads on Reddit. However, when security researchers and curious users attempted to access the provided URL, they found either non-functional addresses, scam sites requesting payment without providing content, or, in several cases, honeypot operations operated by law enforcement agencies attempting to identify individuals seeking illegal content. Jamie Bartlett, a British author and technology journalist who had extensively investigated dark web communities for his book, The Dark Net: Inside the Digital Underworld, investigated the specific claim and published his findings in a June 2017 article for The Spectator. He wrote, "I spent considerable time attempting to verify this Red Room claim, consulting with security researchers, examining blockchain transactions associated with the provided Bitcoin addresses, and analyzing the technical feasibility of the described scenario. Every investigative thread led either to obvious scams, dead ends suggesting law enforcement operations, or technical impossibilities. This pattern is consistent with virtually every Red Room claim I have investigated over the past 5 years. Dramatic assertions followed by evidence of either hoaxes or genuine but non-live-streamed violent content being mischaracterized. Despite consistent debunking efforts, the Red Room mythology demonstrated remarkable resilience, adapting to new technologies and incorporating elements from genuine criminal cases to maintain plausibility. By late 2018 and throughout 2019, Red Room narratives evolved to incorporate references to the Peter Scully case and similar documented instances of commercial violence production, creating a more sophisticated mythology that acknowledged the technical limitations of live streaming while maintaining that some upgraded version circumvented these obstacles. Online communities discussing Red Rooms began referencing hypothetical solutions to the live streaming problem. Private networks operating outside Tor with dedicated fiber optic connections, exclusive invitation-only sites serving only wealthy individuals who could afford expensive direct connections to servers in lawless regions, or advanced compression algorithms that enabled acceptable video quality through standard Tor routing. These technical speculations, while creative, generally failed to account for the fundamental economics and operational security challenges that made genuine Red Room operations implausible. A February 2019 research paper by Dr. Gareth Owen, a computer scientist at the University of Portsmouth who conducted extensive research mapping Tor hidden services, explained that the economics of operating a genuine Red Room facility would be substantially unfavorable given the technical infrastructure required, the operational security challenges, the risk profile, and the limited potential customer base. Criminal enterprises generally follow economic logic, seeking to maximize profit while minimizing risk. Custom-produced content delivered asynchronously achieves similar financial results with dramatically lower technical complexity and reduced exposure windows, making it the rational choice for criminals in this space. The persistence of live-stream narratives appears driven more by the psychological appeal of interactivity and the horror of real-time violence than by any operational advantage such approaches would provide to criminals. The intersection of Red Room mythology with political conspiracy theories emerged as another complicating factor between 2016 and 2020. The QAnon conspiracy movement, which gained prominence during this period, incorporated elements of Red Room narratives into its elaborate mythology about global elite pedophile rings, claiming that prominent politicians and celebrities participated in or commissioned live-streamed torture and exploitation of children. These allegations weaponized legitimate concerns about child exploitation and the genuine horrors revealed in cases like Peter Scully's prosecution, combining them with baseless accusations against specific individuals to create a conspiracy narrative that proved remarkably resilient despite repeated debunking. The conflation of documented dark web criminal activity with unsubstantiated conspiracy theories created significant challenges for law enforcement agencies, child protection organizations, and journalists attempting to communicate accurately about genuine threats. The National Center for Missing and Exploited Children issued a statement in November 2018 explicitly addressing this conflation, stating, "While the exploitation of children online represents a genuine and serious threat requiring vigilant law enforcement response and public awareness, the promotion of conspiracy theories about specific individuals without evidence undermines legitimate child protection efforts by directing resources toward investigating baseless claims rather than actual cases of abuse. Organizations combating child exploitation rely on credible reporting and evidence-based investigations, not viral accusations that have been repeatedly debunked by law enforcement and journalistic investigations." Despite such statements, the conspiracy theories persisted, demonstrating how Red Room mythology had evolved beyond simple urban legend into a complex cultural phenomenon, intersecting with political polarization, declining trust in institutions, and the challenge of information verification in digital environments. A significant development in understanding dark web violence economies came with the August 2019 arrest of Benjamin Falner, a 52-year-old former video production specialist from Portland, Oregon, who had operated a dark website called Custom Depravity between 2014 and 2018. Unlike the Scully case, which focused on child exploitation, or the Hurt 2, the core marketplace, which facilitated various forms of violent content, Falkner's operation specifically targeted adult victims and represented what prosecutors described as the closest documented approximation to the classic Red Room concept, though it still did not involve genuine live streaming. Falkner had recruited vulnerable individuals, primarily homeless adults and drug addicts, offering them payment to participate in what he initially described as extreme fetish content, but which escalated into severe physical abuse and torture. He produced custom videos based on detailed specifications from paying customers who communicated with him through encrypted channels, with prices ranging from $500 for relatively mild content to $50,000 for extreme scenarios involving severe injury. The operation came to law enforcement attention when a victim escaped from Falkner's property and contacted police, leading to a raid on September 14, 2019, that discovered a purpose-built facility containing restraint equipment, weapons, medical supplies, and extensive video production gear. 3 victims were rescued during the raid, including 2 who had been held against their will for multiple weeks while Falkner produced commissioned content. The Falkner case generated less media attention than the Scully prosecution, partly due to the involvement of adult rather than child victims, and partly due to the ongoing controversy surrounding accurate reporting of dark web violence without sensationalism. However, among law enforcement professionals and researchers studying dark web criminal economies, the case was recognized as particularly significant. During investigation, FBI digital forensics specialists recovered extensive communications between Falkner and approximately 37 customers spanning 4 years, providing unprecedented insight into how these transactions were negotiated, what customers requested, and how producers managed operational security while maintaining customer relationships. Special Agent Michael Torres, who led the FBI's investigation, testified during Falner's preliminary hearing on November 22, 2019, that the recovered communications reveal a business model that closely parallels legitimate custom video production services, with detailed discussions of scenarios, pricing negotiations, delivery timelines, and customer satisfaction follow-ups. The defendant treated extreme violence as a service industry, complete with repeat customers, referral bonuses, and bulk ordering discounts. This commercial professionalism, combined with the severity of violence depicted, represents an alarming evolution in dark web criminal enterprises. The testimony included descriptions of Falner's customer relationship management practices, including a spreadsheet tracking customer preferences, purchase history, and satisfaction ratings, as well as communications, where he solicited feedback on completed projects and offered discounts for customers who provided referrals. This level of commercial sophistication suggested a more developed marketplace for commissioned violence than previously documented, raising questions about whether Falner represented an isolated case or an example of a broader underground economy that had largely evaded law enforcement detection. The technical evidence presented in the Falner case also illuminated why genuine live streaming remained impractical, despite advances in technology. Despite having access to professional video production equipment and presumably the technical knowledge to attempt live streaming if he desired, Falner had opted for the same recorded and delivered model employed by Scully and other documented cases. When prosecutors questioned him about why he did not offer live streaming, given that some customers had specifically requested this option, Falner explained that the technical challenges and security risks made live streaming completely unfeasible for his operation. According to court transcripts from his January 14, 2020 testimony, Falner stated, "Customers asked about live streaming regularly, and I initially investigated providing this service as it would command premium pricing. However, the bandwidth requirements to stream high-quality video through Tor networks would have created severe latency issues, and utilizing standard internet connections would have exposed my IP address and location. Additionally, live streaming eliminates the ability to edit content for maximum impact, control what customers see and when, and requires maintaining victims in a prepared state during scheduled transmission windows. The operational security risks and technical complications made it completely impractical compared to recording sessions, editing them professionally, and delivering finished products through encrypted file transfers." This testimony, from an individual who had operated in this space for years and had clear financial incentives to provide live streaming if practical, represented perhaps the most authoritative explanation for why the classic Red Room scenario remained largely mythical, despite the very real existence of commercial violence production. On March 3, 2020, Benjamin Falner was convicted on multiple federal charges, including kidnapping, production of violent content, interstate commerce violations, and money laundering. Judge Patricia Watkins of the United States District Court for the District of Oregon sentenced him to 37 years in federal prison, stating that the defendant operated a systematic enterprise of human exploitation, treating vulnerable victims as props in commercial content production for customers seeking depictions of extreme suffering. The sophistication of the operation, the duration of criminal activity, and the number of victims requires a sentence that reflects the severity of these crimes and provides both punishment and deterrence. The case established important precedents regarding the application of interstate commerce laws to dark web transactions and the use of cryptocurrency evidence in federal prosecutions. Additionally, the recovery of extensive customer communications enabled federal authorities to initiate investigations into dozens of Falner's customers, leading to multiple subsequent arrests across the United States, Canada, and Europe throughout 2020 and 2021. The Department of Justice issued a press release on March 5, 2020, announcing Falner's conviction and explicitly addressing the Red Room mythology, stating, "While this case demonstrates that commercial production of extreme violence for dark web distribution is a genuine criminal activity requiring vigilant law enforcement response, it is important to note that the specific scenario, commonly described as Red Rooms, interactive live stream torture controlled by paying viewers, remains without credible documentation. The public should be aware that many websites claiming to offer such services are scams designed to steal cryptocurrency. and individuals should report any concerning content to the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children or the FBI's Internet Crime Complaint Center rather than attempting to investigate independently. Throughout 2020 and 2021, as the COVID-19 pandemic drove increased internet usage and heightened social isolation, dark web activity surged across multiple categories, including drug marketplaces, fraud services, and illegal content distribution. Chainalysis, a blockchain analysis firm that tracks cryptocurrency usage and illegal activities, reported in their 2021 Crypto Crime Report that dark web marketplace transaction volumes increased by approximately 43% in 2020 compared to 2019, with continued growth in 2021. This expansion included categories related to violent content, though quantifying this specific segment remained challenging due to its hidden nature and the prevalence of scams that made transaction volume analysis unreliable. The increased dark web activity led to renewed attention on Red Room claims, with multiple viral social media posts throughout 2020 and 2021, claiming to have discovered active Red Room sites or sharing edited videos purporting to show Red Room content. Fact-checking organizations including Snopes, PolitiFact, and Full Fact published multiple articles debunking these claims, typically demonstrating that purported Red Room footage consisted of clips from horror films, staged performances from shock sites, or previously documented violent content repackaged with false narratives. The persistence of these viral claims demonstrated the mythology's continued cultural resonance, even as evidence of its implausibility accumulated. The conversation around red rooms and dark web violence evolved in important ways during 2021 and 2022 as law enforcement agencies, technology companies, and policymakers grappled with broader questions about platform responsibility, encryption policy, and the balance between privacy and security. The debate over end-to-end encryption, which had intensified following terrorist attacks in the mid-2010s, increasingly incorporated references to child exploitation and violent content as arguments for encryption backdoors or reduced privacy protections. Law enforcement officials testified before congressional committees and parliamentary bodies worldwide, arguing that strong encryption enabled criminals to operate with impunity, citing cases like those of Scully and Falner as examples of crimes facilitated by encrypted communications. Civil liberties organizations and technology companies countered that weakening encryption would expose millions of innocent users to security vulnerabilities while driving sophisticated criminals to custom encryption solutions, ultimately harming privacy without significantly impacting serious criminal activity. The Red Room mythology became weaponized in these policy debates, with both sides occasionally referencing either the persistence of the mythology or the documentation of commercial violence production to support their positions. Sarah Rodriguez, policy director at the Electronic Frontier Foundation, testified before the Senate Judiciary Committee on May 17, 2022, that while cases of commercial violence production represent serious crimes deserving aggressive law enforcement response, these cases do not justify compromising the encryption systems that protect journalists, activists, domestic violence survivors, and hundreds of millions of ordinary internet users. Law enforcement has successfully investigated and prosecuted these crimes using traditional investigative techniques, including victim testimony, financial analysis, and international cooperation. The invocation of extreme scenarios to justify surveillance expansion represents a familiar pattern where worst-case examples are used to justify policies with far-reaching implications for civil liberties. A particularly significant development occurred on July 19, 2022, when Australian Federal Police, working with the FBI and Europol, announced the conclusion of Operation Blacklist, a 3-year investigation that had infiltrated multiple dark web communities focused on extreme violent content and resulted in the arrest of 93 individuals across 16 countries. The operation, which began in 2019, employed sophisticated undercover techniques, including the creation of realistic-appearing illegal content using computer-generated imagery and adult actors with digital de-aging effects, allowing law enforcement to gain trust within closed communities without exploiting actual victims. AFP Commissioner Reece Kershaw stated during a July 20th, 2022 press conference in Canberra that Operation Blacklist represents one of the most significant coordinated actions against dark web violence communities in law enforcement history. The operation identified producers of extreme violent content, distributors operating marketplace infrastructure, and consumers creating demand for this material. Importantly, the investigation found no evidence of the interactive live stream torture scenarios, commonly described as red rooms, but did document extensive commercial production of violence on commission, confirming that while the specific red room mythology may be largely unfounded, the underlying commercial exploitation of violence is a genuine threat requiring continued international cooperation and resource allocation. The operation's findings provided law enforcement's most comprehensive assessment of the dark web violence landscape to date, based on 3 years of deep infiltration of relevant communities. The arrested individuals included 12 producers of violent content operating in the Philippines, Thailand, Mexico, Colombia, and several Eastern European nations, 27 marketplace operators and facilitators who provided infrastructure for content distribution, and 54 individuals categorized as major consumers who had collectively spent over $2 million purchasing custom violent content between 2019 and 2022. The investigative techniques employed in Operation Blacklist generated controversy among civil liberties advocates concerned about the ethics of government creation of realistic appearing illegal content, even when created without actual victims. The Australian Federal Police had obtained judicial authorization and oversight for the creation of synthetic content used in undercover operations. But questions remained about whether such techniques could be challenged on entrapment grounds and whether they established precedents that could be expanded to other investigative contexts. Dr. Monique Mann, a criminologist at Deakin University specializing in surveillance and policing, published an analysis in the Australian Journal of Criminal Justice, examining the ethical implications of Operation Blacklist's methodology. She wrote, "While the protection of actual victims through the use of synthetic content in undercover operations represents an ethical improvement over historical practices where law enforcement distributed existing illegal material, questions remain about the implications of state production of content designed to be indistinguishable from genuine criminal material. This approach normalizes the creation of extreme content within law enforcement agencies, requires sophisticated technical infrastructure and expertise, and establishes precedents that could potentially be expanded beyond narrow investigative purposes. The accountability mechanisms surrounding such operations, including judicial oversight, interagency review, and public reporting, require strengthening to prevent mission creep and ensure these extraordinary techniques are reserved for the most serious criminal investigations." Her analysis sparked debate within law enforcement communities and academic circles about the appropriate boundaries for undercover operations in digital spaces and the specific challenges posed by investigations requiring extended infiltration of closed criminal communities. The prosecutions resulting from Operation Blacklist continued throughout 2022 and into 2023, providing additional insight into the economics and psychology of dark web violence communities. Several defendants chose to cooperate with prosecutors, providing testimony about their involvement in the operations of these communities in exchange for reduced sentences. This testimony revealed the role of community norms, status hierarchies, and collective identity in sustaining marks for extreme content. Perpetrators described sophisticated socialization processes where new community members underwent gradual normalization of increasingly extreme content, combined with ideological frameworks that dehumanize victims and recast violence as transgressive acts of freedom or authenticity. Dr. Elizabeth Hurst, a forensic psychologist who evaluated multiple Operation Blacklist defendants and testified as an expert witness in several trials, explained in an interview with The Australian in November 2022, "What we see in these communities is a process of progressive desensitization combined with social reinforcement from like-minded individuals. Many defendants initially accessed relatively mild transgressive content before gradually seeking more extreme material, encouraged by community members who praised increasingly deviant consumption and production. The communities develop elaborate ideologies justifying their interests, often framing themselves as intellectually superior individuals unbound by conventional morality. This collective identity becomes central to many participants' self-concept, making exit difficult even when individuals experience guilt or fear of consequences." Her analysis highlighted the social dimensions of dark web violence communities, challenging simplistic narratives that framed participants as isolated, deviant individuals, and instead revealing complex social structures that recruited, retained, and radicalized members over time. By mid-2023, the accumulated evidence from multiple investigations and prosecutions had established a reasonably clear picture distinguishing Red Room mythology from documented reality. Genuine interactive live-streamed torture-for-pay operations of the type described in classic Red Room scenarios remained without credible documentation, despite years of law enforcement investigation and research attention. The technical obstacles to streaming quality video through anonymous networks, combined with the operational security risks of real-time operations and the economic advantages of recorded content, made such operations impractical for criminals seeking to maximize profit while minimizing detection risk. However, the commercial production of violent content on commission represented a genuine and substantial criminal enterprise operating across multiple countries, involving hundreds, if not thousands, of participants in various roles and generating millions of dollars in illicit revenue annually. The victims of these operations included both children and vulnerable adults exploited by producers who treated violence as a commercial service, creating custom content based on detailed specifications from paying customers. The documentary evidence from multiple investigations demonstrated that customers could request specific acts, scenarios, and victim characteristics, and that producers competed for business by offering increasingly extreme content, faster delivery times, and professional production quality. This custom production model achieved the essential goal that made Red Room's psych. The Red Room phenomenon exists in a complex space between internet mythology and disturbing reality. While the classic conception of interactive live-stream torture sessions remains largely unverified, despite extensive law enforcement investigation, the underlying concept of violence as a service has been repeatedly documented through cases like Peter Scully's operation in the Philippines and Benjamin Falner's enterprise in Oregon. Technical limitations fundamentally prevent the Red Room scenario as popularly imagined. The Tor network's architecture, designed for anonymity rather than bandwidth-intensive applications, creates insurmountable obstacles for high-quality video streaming. Multiple cybersecurity researchers and law enforcement officials have explained that the latency issues, connection instability, and reduced video quality make live streaming through anonymous networks impractical. Criminals operating in the space have consistently chosen recorded content delivered asynchronously, which provides superior operational security, allows professional editing, and eliminates the complications of coordinating real-time sessions while maintaining victim control. However, dismissing Red Rooms as pure fiction ignores documented cases revealing a sophisticated underground economy. Operation Blacklist's 2022 conclusion, resulting in 93 arrests across 16 countries, demonstrated that commercial production of extreme violent content operates at significant scale. Investigators documented producers creating custom content based on detailed customer specifications, marketplace facilitators providing infrastructure connecting buyers and sellers, and consumers spending millions of dollars on commissioned violence. The cases revealed business models mirroring legitimate services, complete with customer relationship management, satisfaction guarantees, and referral programs. The persistence of Red Room mythology serves multiple functions beyond simple misinformation. Scammers exploit the legend to defraud curious individuals seeking access to non-existent streams. Conspiracy theorists weaponize elements of genuine cases to support baseless accusations against public figures. Law enforcement agencies struggle with communicating nuanced realities, distinguishing myth from documented criminal activity. Media outlets face ethical challenges, balancing public interest against sensationalism when reporting these cases. The evolution of this mythology reflects broader anxieties about technology's dark potential, the limits of law enforcement in anonymous digital spaces, and humanity's capacity for commodifying suffering. As encryption debates intensify and dark web activity expands, Red Room narratives continue adapting, incorporating new technologies, and referencing genuine cases to maintain plausibility. Understanding this phenomenon requires acknowledging both the technical implausibility of the classic scenario and the horrific reality of commercial violence production that inspired and sustained the mythology. The distinction matters for effective law enforcement resource allocation, accurate public understanding of genuine threats, and preventing exploitation of legitimate child protection concerns for political or ideological purposes. The Red Room legend ultimately reveals as much about internet culture's relationship with horror and transgression as it does about actual criminal activity in hidden digital spaces.